What's up? It's Mike Mal, and you are listening to the Athletor podcast, where we dive into the processes, mindsets, strategies of some of the most successful athletes and coaches from all walks of life. We've got Hayden Ancheta coming on the podcast today, and if you don't know who he is, he's a YouTuber, big on Instagram and TikTok, and the dude has been creating content around the sport of wrestling for a few years now, and he's absolutely killing it. He talks about a little bit about how he kind of got into the sport, some of his biggest influences, and more importantly, how he started creating really compelling content. Athletor podcast coming at you. Don't go anywhere.
Hey, don't go anywhere. It's Mike. We'll get back to the podcast in just a second. We got to pay the bills though. Do you have an athlete that's looking to break into the social media space? We at AthletorLive.com have a brand new in-depth tutorial done by none other than Hayden Henshaw. If you don't know who Hayden is, he's not even a Division I wrestler, yet he's got hundreds of thousands of engaged followers. Learn how to create engaging content, grow your followers, and open up new opportunities in the NIL space. Go to athletorlive.com/Hayden and we'll give you the first module completely free. Athletor podcast back again. Hayden Ancheta, thank you very much for coming on today, brother.
Thank you for having me. How are you guys?
Oh, real good, man. All right, so before we get started, you are killing it on Instagram, killing it on YouTube. So give me the origin story, man. Give me the origin story of Hayden Ancheta.
Well, I actually started wrestling pretty late. I started wrestling basically touched a mat in like 8th grade, didn't really take it too seriously, was looking at other sports. And then when I entered my freshman year in high school, I was like, oh, okay, I really like this. So I decided to put my all into it. COVID happened, obviously, my sophomore year. So I've really only been wrestling for 4 years.
That's wild.
But yeah, right. I was just on a podcast with Jaden Cox, and he's like, dude, you make me feel so old. And I was like, yeah. But basically, I'm from California, CCS region. So there, Mike, you're here now. I know your son's wrestling at Poway. I mean, we have a pretty hard state tournament.
Sure.
So my entire high school career was just always trying to become a state champ. Always trying to go for that goal. Senior year, was ranked as high as 5th, but when I got to the state tournament, didn't go my way. But everything happens for a reason. I went on a couple visits, took a visit out to West Point, but eventually ended up deciding to go with San Francisco State, close to home. Love the coaching here, love the family here. So yeah, that's where I'm at right now. That's pretty like a very short and condensed story, but yeah.
No, but that's not a bad thing though, right? Like there's upsides to not having a lot of tread, still having some tread on the tires, right? Like
Oh,
there's a
100%.
big upside to that. Like I'm sure you've seen it, guys who peaked in middle school, dude. I mean,
Yeah.
I see it all the freaking time. What was it about the sport that kind of made you fall in love with it in 9th grade?
So I was never much of like my dad did volleyball in high school, and he was an athlete too. He didn't play in college, but he was big on volleyball, and he tried to get me into that. But me personally, I never really liked team sports. And I think there was one Ben Askren quote that really stuck with me. It was, and let me know if you guys know this one, but it was, I don't like team sports because when you lose, you have no one to blame but yourself. And when you win, you have no one else to share the glory with but yourself.
Mm.
So
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
obviously it's like that doesn't always apply because, your coaches, your training partners, you have a lot of people to give that glory to when you win as well. But it's different when you're on a team. Um, let's say if a ball drops in volleyball, I mean, that's maybe on you, but everyone takes it. That's a team effort thing. Wrestling is all on you. It's all individual. You're on that mat alone. Like that's what I love about it. And also it's just
Yeah,
fun. It's just like wrestling's fun.
especially when you were Jason Welsh at SF State. Like that
I
dude
mean,
makes
yeah.
it. That dude makes it so
Yeah.
much fun. I could roll with that dude for 3 hours at a clip. Like he is a tremendous amount of fun to wrestle with.
Exactly. And then the club I was from, Mike, I'm pretty sure I actually went to one of your camps when I was like a freshman or something.
I'm sorry about that.
Do you know Daniel McCune? No.
Very well.
Do you know
Very
Daniel
well.
McCune? Yeah,
Yeah, very
so
well.
that was my coach, and then along with Eric Deuce and a couple other SF State alumni. And then like we had Ernesto Anacona who trains at AKA. They just show that they love the sport more than anything to me. Like they were never really like big on money. Like they weren't like trying to force you to get pay for monthly classes or stuff like that. They just always wanted you to come in the room and wrestle. Like it was never about the money for them. It was about the kids, like the actual experience that they got, trying to make them better and realizing, hey, wrestling's wrestling, wrestling's fun. Put school above wrestling, but just realize if you don't want to be here, you don't have to be here. You know, it's whether or
Yeah.
not you want
Oh,
to get
Daniel
better.
is an interesting cat. I love him to death. But Deuce is one of the most interesting dudes in the world. Try to give us a quick synopsis of Eric Deuce.
All right, so Eric, oh my God, Coach Deuce is honestly one of the most interesting people I've ever met. He's mysterious.
Mhm.
He's sometimes can be cold, uh, really strict, really hard, really tough, old school coach. He wrestled at Iowa under Dan Gable, then went to Wisconsin, then went to Foxcatcher, was under Dave Schultz for a while, was a Japanese national champion. Um, he was supposed to represent Japan at the World Championships, but things fell through because back then, he's not fully Japanese, he's half white. So
Mhm.
I'm not sure exactly what the details of what happened, but he did win the national title there, so he was in line. But essentially, as a coach, I could tell you right now, if it wasn't for Eric Deuce, I wouldn't be where I'm at. Like, put it simply, I've only been wrestling for, if we're not counting COVID, I've only been wrestling for 4 or 5 years, including my year in college, right?
Mhm.
And Deuce made me go from like someone that really wasn't tough up here. I had heart, but maybe I took a little injury. I'd be like, he made you tough. He made you tough.
Yeah.
He made you realize no steps backwards, always on the gas pedal. Don't think about what they're doing, just think about what you're doing. And I brought that mindset into college, like simple as day. And you could tell it works because even people in college, like they'll take steps back. They'll take steps
Yeah.
back. And uh Deuce being the coach he's never someone that's like, oh, take a step backwards. He's always like gas on the pedal 24/7 and just really installs this mental toughness in all the wrestlers he coaches. Like every single one I know. It's like if you're
Yeah.
coached under Deuce, you're going to be a tough wrestler. That's the way I look at it. And that's what I take away from it. And I know for a fact without Eric Deuce, I wouldn't be the wrestler I am today and wouldn't be the person I am today. He installs things in you that, you know, you can use in every part of your daily life. Like he's also a school teacher in the district, so he
Mhm.
puts forward like academics here, then wrestling. Family, academics, wrestling. That's what his thing is. He goes family, academics, wrestling. After the end of every practice, that's what he says. And that's
Mhm.
important because you'll have great wrestlers who don't have the best grades and they're not able to get into good colleges. They might have to go the JUCO route or they might not even go to college, right? And he stresses that. So I really appreciate him, really appreciate what he's done for my life and will forever be grateful. And he's still my coach. I still consider my coach. I went back to visit him literally last Friday. So
Yeah, he's a just such an enigmatic character in this sport, and I wish more people knew about Deuce. And like one of the downfalls of being as kind of enigmatic as he doesn't like to talk about himself, like
nope.
ever.
Yeah, he
That
doesn't have
was a
social media.
bad dude. No, doesn't have social. That like he would never like toot his own horn. Daniel does a good job of kind of telling people like, hey, this is a bad dude.
Hey man, like
But
yeah. Ever
I
since I've
really
been on
love.
Instagram, I've been trying to put it out there like on all my social media. I'm like, guys, I have an insane coach that no one knows about, doesn't give any
Yeah,
credit, like but honestly, I think he he doesn't like want it though, like he's not searching
no,
for that.
there's
Like
no interest.
very
No
modest,
interest.
very, very
No.
humble. Um, but you respect him and you understand that he's gone through a lot in the sport of wrestling and he knows better than 99.9999% of wrestling athletes. So
No doubt, no doubt. And just the time that he spent. I actually did a long sit down interview with him. Golly, it had to be 2022 now. Um, and just talking the way that he talked about Dave Schultz and the time that he spent with Dave, because it wasn't just the time at Foxcatcher that he spent with Dave. Like, don't forget, Dave is from Palo Alto,
Yeah.
so it's like he was
Mm-hmm.
in, he was hanging out with Dave at the Stanford room pretty consistently and
Yeah.
training with him there. And just the reverence that he has for Dave Schultz. And I guess everyone has a tremendous amount of reverence for Dave Schultz. Like he martyred himself for this sport. Um, but to listen to Deuce and some of the stories that he has about Schultz is, I just like, I want him to be on a social just to kind of get those stories out. You know what I mean?
100%. I mean, I remember he told us a story about how he was in the Stanford room and he wanted to wrestle Schultz real bad. Ends up being able to wrestle him, and then I don't know what happened, but Schultz drove him into like,
Choked him out.
or not choked him out, but I think uh he either broke an arm or his head went through a wall, uh, Deuce. And Schultz was like, "Oh crap! Like this is a high schooler. Like I might be in
Yeah.
trouble." And then Deuce is up here. He's kind of crazy, so he's like, "That's so cool! I just got my head thrown through a wall by Dave Schultz." Like I was like, "That's the coolest story ever."
Yeah, he's an like, so from every account that I've ever heard, the first time Dave would grab you, he would deliberately try and choke you unconscious and then just wake you up. I can remember when I was a kid. So when I was a kid, I went to a clinic of his. My dad brought me. I was like 10 years old or something like that. And I remember him teaching a front headlock and then showing us how to not only choke the guy unconscious, but then wake him up before the referee noticed that he was unconscious. And I'm like 10 years old looking at my dad like, is this all right? I don't know if this is all right.
So
Probably
funny,
not.
yeah. It's funny because Deuce does that too. Deuce teaches that. He's like he teaches what Schultz used to teach him, and it's always so cool because in the room he'd be like, um, yeah, Dave Schultz used to teach me this. Obviously, there's young wrestlers in the room. They don't know who Dave Schultz is. So he has to give
Sure.
the whole rundown. And you can just tell like how much he respected Schultz and how much every wrestler that knew Schultz respected him. Like it's pretty amazing.
It's one of the reasons that the wrestling community at large, right? Like, so I do a lot of traveling, and the one thing that kind of broke down all the barriers for Dave was the fact that he spoke Russian.
Yeah.
But Deuce made it very, very clear to me that not only did he speak Russian, he was fluent in Japanese as well, which was
Mhm.
like, oh crap, like I didn't even think about that. Yeah, we think about the Russians and how they've kind of been a perennial
Yeah.
powerhouse over the last 30, 40, 50 years. But Japan has a really, really long history of wrestling too, both in this country and in Japan itself. And now
Yeah.
you're seeing it, like, these dudes are killing it on the world stage, like not just
Yeah.
at the senior level. I was at U17s, I watched U20s.
Yeah.
These guys are
Yeah,
for
no.
real, like no joke.
They did fantastic at U20s just this
Yeah,
past week. And then of course everyone
yeah,
knows what they did in Paris. I mean, brought qualified 13 weights, medaled in 11, 8 of those gold, 9
wild.
in the finals. What the hell? Like that's
Yeah,
insane.
it's wild. Wild. Yeah. All right. So you brought up Instagram. So how did you get into content creation and social media?
Well, like I stated before, I only started wrestling really when I entered high school. So before that, I loved playing video games. uh as any freaking person, Gen Z person would. But really addicted to video games, and I loved watching people on YouTube and stuff. And I was always like, oh yeah, I'd love to be a YouTuber. I'd love to make content. It just seemed like a very fun passion of mine. And it was like um started like just making videos of me playing video games at first in middle school and did that a lot. And I love the the ability to, record yourself and then put it all together, edit it, and then put it out on the internet. It's like creation. It's like making something of your own, making a brand, making something that other people can see that you created. It's really cool. And then obviously I got into wrestling, and then I'd say my senior year, I think when I qualified for Fargo, my junior year, I made like my first like wrestling video, and then I started posting on like TikTok and Instagram, later down the line, and then eventually I just started catching traction, and I'd say it's mainly just because I post like I would like to think high quality content. I've always been someone that's like quality over quantity, but don't get that confused because you still have to be consistent. And
Mhm.
people say it's like hard, it's like a job or whatever, but honestly, if you have fun with it, like I like what I do, like I get to wrestle every day and chase my dreams, but also like make content for brands, and make content for
Mhm.
myself. Like those YouTube videos that I'm posting, those reels, like these are memories that I'm going to be able to carry, because we only can wrestle for maybe 1/5 of our life,
Sure.
so
Sure. Yeah, no, that's great. I guess the real question is like, I think that there's probably upwards of thousands of kids that want to do what you do through, using their medium of social media to kind of tell their own story. But where do you start? Like, so for me, it was easy, man. I just took a flip. I mean, literally the first Behind the Dirt was shot on an iPhone 4. That was propped against a kettlebell. It was bare bones. So, but the quality of content has gone way up over the last 20 years since I've been creating content. Where do you start now? Like you've got audio equipment behind you that I can see. You know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
it's not quite as easy as just turning the phone around.
Totally. I mean, I wouldn't even say that though, because I started on like an iPhone 8 or something. Um,
Mhm.
and I didn't have camera equipment until like maybe my senior year of high school. And it wasn't even like a crazy lens. It was like the starter lens. But before that, like I just film on my phone, which was like that was it. Like you don't need a lot. People think you need a lot of fancy equipment, and I know people always say this, and some people don't believe it. Some people are like, "That's easy for you to say." Now you have the lenses, now you have the mics, the computer equipment. It's like, yeah, but I didn't. Like my parents weren't gonna pay for that. My parents
Right.
were gonna pay for my education, my housing, and whatever I needed for wrestling, and that's it. And I appreciate them for that, but I'm not gonna ask them to pay for like uh $1,500 lens. That's
Right.
on me.
Yeah.
So I started on a phone, I made content on it, and then I put it into an editing software and edited. And you can still make quality content like that. Like quality content doesn't exactly always mean the the image quality. It means the idea, the creation, and then everything that you put behind the actual footage. So post editing, right? And I feel like that's really important. Like there were a lot of ideas that I had in high school that weren't filmed on a great camera, but because it was a good idea and I knew how to edit, knew how to market it, it blew up, went viral. I had a couple videos, or I had a video that went on ESPN MMA, Sports Center, like that was literally shot on an iPhone. I was just recording practice, and that is still to this day my most viral video. So it's all about the idea and what you see behind it.
Mm. And I think the I have people that are like, hey, you should start. What do I got to do to start a podcast? I'm like, just press record, dude. Just
Yeah.
press record. That's it. It's
Yeah.
really that simple, and you'll figure the rest out. It's really that simple. And so, if you were kind of talking to a 16-year-old you, what do you think you would tell them to do differently then?
Um, I would probably say to stay more consistent on uploading. I got pretty like I had no upload schedule. Like I just posted whenever I wanted, maybe would post 5 videos in a week and then not post for like 2 weeks, and that stuff adds up. Uh, it's all about consistency. Like I said, if you're posting a video every other week, you're posting a video once a week, you're posting a video, just have a consistent upload schedule, whatever that might be. Obviously, the more videos in a week, the better. That's just common sense. But I would definitely tell my 16-year-old self to post a bit more consistently, make have a bit more ideas in the tank. But you know, I'm I am definitely not mad with how I did things back then, and I'm happy with where it led me now. So
Yeah, that makes sense. So now you posting consistently, but you have to take time to create that stuff as well.
yeah,
How do you deal with the schedule of like
yeah,
being
to-
an athlete, being a student,
totally.
content creator? It's not easy, bro.
So that's one thing that my parents always stress about. Like they've always been big on my grades. And like we commuted an hour and a half there and back to school every single day just to go to a pretty good academic high school, for a majority of my life. So that's how serious they are about grades. And definitely entering college, I mean, I'll take this year for instance. Right now this year I'm enrolled in 6 classes. I'm obviously a student athlete at San Francisco State. That's around 20 plus hours of athletic responsibilities outside of that. I'm the marketing director for the business marketing program or mentorship program at our school. And then obviously the social media, right? So I'm doing a lot, but I'm not really that stressed about it. And that mainly is because like I allocate time for that. I'm not a big party guy. I don't go out and party a whole lot. I don't really have that sort of thing. And don't really do anything else besides like wrestling, school, spending time with my family and my girlfriend, and then um, making content. So when you put that into perspective, if I'm not playing video games for 2 hours a day, I can use those 2 hours to edit. And vice versa. If I'm not doing that, I could use those 2 hours to make content, to wrestle. And I feel like it really comes down to that. If I was a typical student, I would be probably partying or wasting like 10 plus hours a week just on my phone brain rotting. But I'm definitely someone that likes to be efficient with my time. I don't like wasting time. That's like one of the main things I hate. And I definitely got that from my parents. I mean, they're always about being efficient with your time. Like they'd always tell me like you're playing video games for like 5 hours a day. And I knew it was bad, but I was like, it's an addiction. La da da da. But it's like if you can strip that addiction away, let's say replace whatever addiction you have with something that is efficient and beneficial for you, like content creation. It's like, okay, boom, you're there. You just allocated so much of your time to something that's efficient and you're not as stressed because I feel like when people think about all the stuff you do, like, yeah, it's a lot, but if you're having fun with it and you enjoy doing it, it's not hard. It really isn't.
No,
I
it's
love
not a job,
wrestling.
dude.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
not like, dude. People are like, they, it's funny. They're like, so you just go around the world making videos with your buddies? I'm like, yeah, pretty much.
So dope.
And I know it sounds crazy, but it is what it is. Uh, It's not a job. It's a fun way to make a living for sure.
Yeah.
Um, what are you most excited about in terms of content creation as you see, this world is changing, right? Like
Yeah.
there's this is a very malleable kind of field that we're in. What are you most excited about in the future for content creation?
That's a really good question. I've never really thought about that. Um, I feel like especially nowadays we've covered pretty much all aspects of like, dude, everything's been done. Like it's hard to come up with a new idea because it's already been
Sure.
done. Um, but I feel like one thing that would be really cool, and you're starting to see it right now, with like daily streamers and people like that on Twitch or whatever, is exploring the world. Uh, and let's put that into wrestling terms. How many people do you know that go to travel internationally and then actually take a camera with them and record content. Not a lot.
Almost none. Almost none.
Exactly. I know like maybe I know Stefan Micic does that. And that's really
Mhm.
cool. And
Mhm.
honestly, I see him doing really well social media wise because he brings that aspect into the
Sure.
game, you know? And I feel like that's something that if we're talking about content creation, at least wrestling wise, that's just like that's a game changer. I mean, we have all these content creators in the US. I mean, not a whole lot, but we do. But they're only in the US. I mean, they don't go exploring. They don't really go outside internationally. And there's so much more than just the US. We've seen it with Russia, with Japan, with Iran. Um, it's just like even like countries like India, they're no one really talks about them. You know, no one really
Yeah,
knows how good they are at wrestling. Are they a
dude, I
powerhouse
gotta
like
tell you,
Russia? No, but
yeah,
they are really good. They're still really good.
real good. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that, and I got to do a better job of it too, because I go on these trips and I'm paid to post to USA Wrestling's account, right? And by the time I post all the content, I don't want to put it up on mine. I don't want to get all the behind the scenes stuff, but I should, because there's some like super cool little things that go on at these events and stuff that happens behind the scenes that is just like, it's kind of mind blowing, right? Like
Yeah.
just the way that these guys train, like watching some of these, like I'll take for instance the girls. Like, dude, I was in Jordan at U17s. Some of these girls are running for hours in plastics, and we saw it bite that girl from India in the ass at the Olympic
That's
Games, and it
crazy.
sucks. But like, somebody's got to capture that, right? Like somebody like whether that's a black eye on the sport or not, it's a
Yeah.
part of the sport and it has to be captured. And I think, man, we could do a better job. You're right. International stuff is like by far the best version of our sport. And to show some of the people in the US what's going on in other countries and how they train and how they go about the weight cut and how they go about competing and what their pre-match ritual looks like and that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
I think it's really big, man.
And I completely agree. There's so many countries that are doing like things that, US could take away from that, good and bad. You just talked about weight cutting, which is obviously it's a part of our sport and it might be a black eye, but there's also other things, like Japan is their mental side of the sport, They're
Sure.
always smiling. They're always smiling. Win, loss, they're always smiling. They're just they're they've I feel like especially with them, and this is something I struggle with, and it's something our coaches talk about, and any great wrestler will say it as well. I feel like every Japan wrestler has somehow uh through whatever they do, pre-match ritual, whatever they're training, they've surrendered the outcome, and that's
Yes.
huge. And that's huge because you can see it in their facial expression. They're not devastated when they lose because they know that, hey, it's okay. It's just wrestling. Win or loss, I put my best out there. It's not worth getting this upset over, But yeah.
It's you got something, Joel? Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I think it's also just interesting of like starting to get storylines too, right? Where right now, like you don't really get a lot of story or drama that
Yeah.
happens normally, right? Like obviously around the Olympics we got some, but you don't really get to see or hear or know personality of the people that are competing. And I think when you get to know that, it makes it a little bit easier to cheer for them and to follow their journey, right?
100%. And that is another thing. Like, I don't want to be the one to do it. I'm not that type of person, but drama is needed for a sport. It's nice to have that side of to attract viewers that, maybe aren't hardcore wrestling viewers. I mean, I'm not saying crazy stuff, but like, I mean, look at how UFC, boxing, even like basketball, football, there's always a bit of trash talk. There always is,
Mhm.
some to a higher degree. But I feel like in wrestling, we're so old school and there's just a lot of modesty in our sport. no one really
Sure.
wants to speak bad, and that's completely fine. I'm kind of like that too. Like I don't ever want to be disrespectful before a match or try to set someone off, you know. But like that's kind of needed really to really make a sport blow up. Like I feel like this whole have you guys been keeping up with Carter Starachi and
And
AJ
AJ.
Ferrari?
Hmm.
That stuff draws eyes, whether you like it or not. That draws eyes to our sport in a good way or a bad way. It draws eyes, and more people are going to be tuning into if they wrestle. More people are going to be tuning into that match than ever before. I can guarantee that.
Sure. No, you're not right. You're not wrong. There's a balance, right? I'm all for the storylines, but I also think that we can, like Joel was saying, we can probably create those storylines just by getting to know the athletes, right? Like I want to know about that girl from India. I want to know about like what it was like getting down to weight and trying to get down again. Like give me that story, dude. Like there, it makes it easier. And by the way, she did beat probably the best pound for pound wrestler in the world when she was down at weight, right? Like so Yui
That's
Sasaki is a badass. Like that
That's
chick is
like
bad.
that's like a top 5 upset in Olympic history. I feel
For sure.
like
For
people
sure
don't
it is.
people don't understand. Actually, I feel like people did understand because everyone knows who Yui Sasaki is. She hadn't been
Mhm.
beaten. She hadn't been scored on in like how many years? Like 3 years? Scored on, not even
Yeah,
a
she
push
gave up a
out.
step or something
She
like
gave
that.
out
But
a
aside
step
from
out, and that was the biggest conversation of that whole
yeah,
tournament. Holy crap, she
true
gave out
story.
a step out. Wow, that's
Yeah,
crazy. Yui Sasaki gave up a single point. That's insane.
yeah,
That's how good Yui Sasaki is. And
she's good.
for someone to beat her, and in the first round too, like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh. Like that was ridiculous. That was
But
insane.
again, like I want that story. Like, hey, you know, what? Tell me what's going through your head. Like you're wrestling, arguably the best wrestler on the planet, and you just bullied her around, right? You just grabbed her by the ears and started pulling her down, and that it takes a set of stones to do that. And then, the unfortunate weight cutting the night after. It's like this is a story that needs to kind of be told, and if she's listening, and I know she is, hit me up. Hit me up. You like that one, Joel? Of course she is, right? But we look at our numbers all the time. We have like 1% female audience, and it's basically Cali moms, like just whatever. But
Callie's up.
no,
Callie's up.
yeah. So, but it is what it is, right? But I want to hear that story, man. I'd be more than happy to interview her and do whatever it is to get that story out there.
Yeah,
100%.
man. That's a great idea. You should definitely do that. I think you'd be good for it. I think it'd be great for the sport too. Like I don't know her story in details, but I heard that what she went through was crazy. Like not
There's
besides
no,
like outside of wrestling, like her.
yeah.
But yeah,
I heard she was like blood transfusions and stuff like that too to try and make weight. And like at this
I
point,
don't
I'm
know
like,
about
what
that.
actually happened? Like cutting your hair is like, okay,
Well,
that's not
that's
gonna do anything. But like, all right, like, are you really like drawing blood and then you're still not making weight?
dude, that's crazy.
yeah. That's a tough go. That's a tough go. And like you were saying, Hayden, it doesn't. It didn't. The story doesn't start with the weight cut. Like the story
Yeah,
starts 6 months before. Like
it's crazy.
it's yeah. Again, story just needs to be told. All right,
Yep.
brother. We are running a little bit scarce on time. We're gonna hit you some quick questions. Try not to think about these. Just fire away as best you can.
All right, I got it.
What is the best wrestling shoe of all time?
Oh my god. Um, Dan Gable, A6. Do you know this one? I'm forgetting the full thing, but
Okay.
A6 Dan Gable, like Evo, I think, or something. I love those ones. Those are good ones.
Ultimate or something like that.
Something like that. They're great shoes.
Dan
Okay.
Gable Evo 3s.
Yes, I like those.
There you
We'll
go.
post the pic.
Or the no, yeah. I'm gonna stick with my pick. I'm not overthinking. Let's keep going.
Okay. I like it. I like it. You get four, and they have to be American. Who is on your Mount Rushmore of wrestling?
Dave Schultz, JB.
Ooh.
Dave Schultz, JB, Dan Gable, John Smith. Those are my 4.
Ooh, that's a good list. That's a good
Mhm.
list.
Yeah. Yeah.
Really
Actually,
good.
yeah. I've actually had this question asked to me, so
There you go.
I was ready for that
Okay.
one.
There you go. That's good. You got a magic wand.
Okay.
You can change one thing about the sport of wrestling and it changes immediately. What would it be?
For folk style, freestyle, Greco, what are we talking about?
Yeah, it's your wand, brother.
Bit more physicality. I like the ability to be able to club someone hella hard and not get punished for it.
Yeah, look, you're in the right place, man. College wrestling, you get away with quite a bit for
Yeah.
sure.
No,
get
they'll
away
still
with quite
call
a bit.
you. They'll still call you. I got called a lot this year.
Really?
Yeah, I'm a pretty heavy hands guy, so I like to get up in their face and then try to blast double them. So I got called a bit. I got called in Canada a lot too.
Yeah. Tell those referees walk it off. They're fine.
Yeah.
All right. Awesome, brother. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you both. This was awesome.
Awesome, brother. All right. Thanks again. See you.
See ya.
Wait, don't go anywhere. Before you hit that next button, if you enjoyed listening to this episode, do us a huge favor. Click that subscribe button, and if you're so inclined, leave a review and share it.
What you wanna know, man? Welcome to the show.